Before we proceed with the motion to adopt the agenda for this afternoon, I would like to seek the members' cooperation, if there's no objection, for the oath to be administered to the Secretary of Labor. Any objections from the members? Okay. Madam Secretary, can you please step up? And our clerk, Ms. Tiara Blanca, will administer the oath. If you would kindly raise your right hand.
Ms. Vicky I. Beneventi, you do solemnly swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you shall give in the matter at hand shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. You may have a seat. May I hear a motion from the members to adopt the agenda for this afternoon? It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor for the adoption of the agenda, say aye. Nays? Motion carried. We are on item number 3 on the agenda for public comments. If there's anybody out there in the audience that would like to step up to the podium and make a comment under this particular agenda for this afternoon's meeting, you may proceed, and please limit your testimony to 5 minutes at the most. And if you have anything written, we would also ask our Sergeant at Arms to get a copy of your statement. Anybody from the public? Thank you. Please state your name, and we'll limit your comments to 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
My name is Nathan Elliott, and I'm in here because of the I could say misinformation. I'm hearing some things concerning poor. First of all, I want to thank God for being here, and thank you, Ms. Guerrero, for staying in touch, and God bless you for calling me, and your office calling me and trying to stay in touch with me on concerning LWA and all kinds of things pertaining to this issue on poor. Some time ago, about the 10th of this month, I got a phone call saying that I will be receiving my poor after I get my transaction number. That's after 3 weeks of waiting, after I was told prior to that I had been approved. During this phone call, I told informed my adjudicator, whose name I'm not going to call, that I had an issue on my claim this time. First time I had an issue. It was pertaining to the filing 3 jobs a week. I am a full-time worker who was reduced hours. Hours were reduced because of the pandemic, and that's pretty much the whole island. And I stand here not only in representation of myself, but also the whole island and the company I work for, because it seems to be a misunderstanding. I don't know if it's on my part, on the Department of Labor, or some kind of misinformation or misunderstanding, because according to the law, Hawaiian law that was written, and was also in the paper, which I was talking, when I was talking to the young lady on the phone, that we are supposed to be exempt from going out to find 3 jobs a week, applying for 3 jobs a week. It's also on the web page for the poor. After this conversation, I was told that it's only done here in CMI. I informed the young lady I know about unemployment, because when I'm in the States, I'm able to draw unemployment. And the only ones to go out and look for a job are those who are unemployed. That's the whole reason for this exemption, is to get those who are unemployed, laid off, to go look for a job. Those who are employed shouldn't have to do this, and that's according to this law. And I don't know if I'm reading it wrong or what's going on, but as soon as I heard about this, I called some friends of mine who called the Department of Labor, and they told them also that they were exempt, who are employed. So I want to better, what's going on. I come here to see about why is it different on the web page and also in the newspaper, and then something here in the CMI is totally different, but you're supposed to be going by the Hawaiian law. I can't put no simple than that. It's written down. We are exempt from looking for jobs. That's pretty much the whole CMI. Everybody don't reduce hours. So if everybody's gonna go out and look for a job, reduce hours. Everybody that's laid off gonna look for a job. Everybody that's don't have a job gonna look for a job. It's gonna be a whole bunch of people out here looking for jobs. Well, the main reason for this exemption is for those who are unemployed. So I had to say. I had more to say, but I would. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And did we get a copy of your testimony, sir? Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else? It's still open for public comments. You can step up to the podium. There's nobody else, so public comments is now officially closed. We'll move on to the next agenda on item number 4. The Secretary of Labor does have a PowerPoint presentation this afternoon. I appreciate it. And Madam Secretary, we will limit your presentation to at the most maybe 10 minutes. And I did talk to your staff earlier that as we go along with the Q&A regarding the administration of the program, that she could guide you through the slides as it pertains to the respective questions that you need to respond to. So, Madam Secretary, you may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Senator Edith Guerrero. First of all, I'd like to thank you for allowing us to come and answer your questions regarding the PUA program. And secondly, I'd like to inform the members that I have several members of the DOL and PUA team here with me. If I may introduce them really quickly. To my left is our Administrative Hearing Officer, Jacqueline Nicholas, and I also have the directors, supervisors for DOL and PUA, and they are Jeff Camacho, Agata Camacho, Sharon Palacios, Lorenza Aldan, Timothy Acaivo, Francis Torres, James Ujoa, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be missing a bunch of them. But I've asked the team to come this time before this body in case you have some questions that I am not able to answer. I expect that I will be able to answer all your questions, including the gentleman's question regarding the work search requirement. I will address that at a later time. It's also in the PowerPoint. If I may proceed with the PowerPoint, it is a lengthy PowerPoint presentation. I've given everyone paper copies, so I will speak fairly quickly so that I will try and use just 10 minutes of your time, and then we can go right into your Q&A, if I may. Next slide, please. As you know, PUA took off in June 2020. This is the program at a quick look. It's the claims taking, adjudication process, BPC unit, which Ms. Sharon Palacios is in charge of, the Administrative Hearing Office, which Ms. Nicholas is in charge of, the Communication Center, which Ms. Agata Camacho is in charge of, and our Federal and Finance Reporting, which we do at the Administrative Office of the Secretary. Next slide, please. We opened the doors on June 17. We signed an agreement with the U.S. Department of Labor in March 27. The law was passed, the CARES Act, and then we signed the agreement with U.S. DOL on March 29, just 2 days later. And if you may recall, everyone was working from home at that time. But in June, we opened up, and we had opened out outdoors in the middle of the road. Next slide, please. We were awarded, the first award came to us June 10, 2020. It was a PUA grant of $43 million, FPUC grant of $25 million. That should be the other way. It's actually FPUC of $43 million and PUA of $25 million. And then administrative funds were also granted of $1.7 million. That's another picture of that same day, opening day, where we received almost 600 vehicles and over 1,000 applicants. Just flashback to June 2020, when we only had 23 cases and it climbed up to 30 cases by the end of June. Next slide, please. And then in November, we had climbed up to 98. And so COVID continued to wreak havoc, not only in our economy, but in our community, as far as the fear of being outside, the fear of contracting this virus, so many unknowns at that time. Next slide, please. I wanted to show you this picture of the ambulance because we've had ambulances come to our department, about 3 times in the past year. These are for the staff. The staff have been under an incredible amount of pressure and stress because of, I mentioned this in our past oversight hearings and committee meetings, that many of our applicants are under a lot of stress themselves. And when they call to follow up on their claims, they have become some quite rude and obnoxious, and causing some of the staff to actually have anxiety and panic attacks, and causing quite a bit of problems in our own department. To counteract the stress, we've had a lot of stress management training. Thank you to CHCC for providing that to us. They provided us with some tools on how to overcome the stress that comes with this particular job. It is a very stressful job, and my team does its best to overcome the stress and help our people as much as possible. Next slide, please. This picture was taken a couple of days ago. As you can see, there are no lines, there are no cars. This gentleman had timed in or signed on about 8 o'clock in the morning, and that's pretty much how the line went most of the day. We are receiving maybe about, in August, a little bit more since the work search requirement was announced, but in July we were receiving about 30 applicants a day. Now we're up to almost 70 applicants per day. Next slide, please. We continue to be monitored by the U.S. Department of Labor. Of course, they're not here, but it's always online, a Teams meeting. We used to have almost daily briefings with the U.S. Department of Labor. Then we became, I guess, compliant, and they were giving us weekly conference calls, and now we're up to monthly conference calls. And the team you see in the pictures are all from different parts of the U.S. Department of Labor in Washington, D.C., in Texas, and in San Francisco. Next slide, please. I wanted to draw your attention to this particular slide. We received this letter from Steve Malares, the supervisor at the U.S. Department of Labor, regarding the CNMI Department of Labor and its compliance with all of the PUA and FPC programs with regards to the implementation. I wanted to emphasize this slide to you all because it shows factually that we have been following every single rule and guideline that has been issued to the CNMI as a state. And this is the reason why USDO continues to provide funding for our PUA and FPUC program, because if we weren't in compliance, we would not be getting any grants or funding from US Department of Labor. Next slide, please. And that's the continuation of his letter. Next slide, please. UPU 1421. A UPU is an unemployment insurance program letter. There are dozens of them that were issued to all states and territories who are handling PUA programs. This one was just enacted July 12. We had a webinar, and usually these webinars are like 3 or 4 in the morning. We take notes, we ask questions and answer questions as well about this UPU. One of many. Next slide, please. You can see this is all the required reading that every single PUA coordinator is required to swallow, read, absorb, and understand fairly quickly. They range from the UPUs to security laws, to handbooks, to NASWA learning, fact sheets, and press releases. A lot of information for this short amount of time. Next slide, please. Just to give you a picture of what the claims looks like, the initial claims are taken at Building 1334 in Capitol Hill. This picture was taken in July, just last month. Again, no long lines, no one's waiting. We try and handle our clients at the window because of the to mitigate the effects or the danger or the risk of contracting COVID-19. As you can see, the hours go from claims taking and adjudication process to weekly claims filed, fact-finding adjudications. This is where the bulk of the time takes for our clients to respond to our PUA coordinators. And then a determination is made by the adjudicator. A real quick video on the next slide. This was taken a couple of days ago. If you look at it, maybe you can guess where this video was taken. It's just a minute.
Ayla's super fresh and truckload store offers fresh produce, food variety, quality brands, and so much more. Amazing deals on daily essentials and must-have electronics. Want more savings? Sign up for It's free. Start earning rewards and redeem credit or online or in-store purchases. See store for details. Or shop for all your needs. Ayla's super fresh and truckload store. Your customers always come first.
Okay, you can skip that video. Thank you. And I believe, we're in pool finance. And there you go. So yes, this is where we're at. Cumulative funding that was received by the U.S. Department of Labor to the CNMI Department of Labor or Finance is about 706 million. We have expended about 209 million. These are just for benefits and as well as for administrative costs. Next slide, please. These are the grants that were given for just administrative expenses, and this is how much we spent. 4.2 million was granted and 3.1 million was expended to date. Next slide, please. We have to submit a weekly report to the U.S. Department of Labor and tell them how many weeks, how many applicants, how many eligible applicants were found to be able to receive benefits, how many are pending, how many were DQ'd. So to date, we had received 39,000 applications since June of 2020. We have found eligible 10,285 applicants. Number of applicants pending are about 2,559, and DQ'd are 26,242. Every single one of these applications had to be done manually. Most of them were fraudulent, as far as actually half of the 39,000 were fraudulent claims, and the other balance of the 26,000 were disqualified. Next slide, please. Just some important dates of when the CARES Act was published or passed, and then when the Continued Assistance Act was passed. And you see the dates, February 2020 to December for the CARES Act. The CAA is December 2020 to March this year. And finally, the ARPA, what we call ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, was passed just this year, March 14, 2021 to September 4, 2021 is the Pandemic Assistance Program period. Please note that we will be accepting pool applications up to October 4th. US DOE has given us another 30 days to accept PUA applications. The gentleman who spoke this morning had mentioned about work search requirements. Yes, it is a Hawaii state law that we do have to follow as mandated by the U.S. Department of Labor. It is effective August 1, 2021 to September 4, 2021. We had a training with the staff just a few days before it launched. The training was held on July 28, 2021. Next slide, please. Some more information. We sent out a press release. We put some information on our website about the work search requirement. You know, I understand this is a very frustrating climate. We have more businesses that are trying to open and are unable to because look at the economy. We don't have our tourism industry 100% yet, but we are working on it. And this is a requirement that is mandated by the U.S. Department of Labor, not the CNMI Department of Labor, but we are following the rules, and we will do all we can to assist the claimants look for a job, register on the website, fill out a resume, anything that we can do to assist them in trying to look for a job. Next slide, please. Continuing in Saipan, Tinian, and Rhoda, we do have staff there, and we meet with them very, very frequently to assess their needs as far as the applicant's questions, processing of claims, and also to obtain some data. Next slide, please. Speaking of data, we have had 331 applicants on Tinian. As you can see, there are about 76 weekly certifications that are submitted. This is from June 2021 to July 2021. Some supporting documents were submitted by 120 applicants, and 146 claimants were asking just to follow up what's going on with the PUA my PUA claims. On Rhoda, we have a couple of PUA staff there. In addition to running PUA program, we also collaborated with the mayor's office for a work, what they call job fair, not a work fair, a job fair. We held that just a few weeks ago. We sent the team there from the Employment Services, of which James Ujoa and Director Eugene Tebeteb headed in Rhoda. And there's the PUA data there. We have 98 pending PUA applicants in Rhoda, a few that were disqualified, and 186 applicants who were adjudicated. So a total of about 311 weekly certifications were submitted from January to July 2021. Next slide, the BPC, which Sharon Palacios heads, the Benefit Payment Control Unit. This is the unit that does the fraud investigations, audits, overpayments. As of last month, the BPC had identified 4,000 overpayment cases. 2,100 of these cases have been identified as out of state, out of the CNMI, therefore fraudulent claims. 422 cases were identified as claimants that don't fall under qualified aliens or qualified citizens, and about 1,400 cases have been identified as disqualified claims, misfiled claims, or wages unreported. To date, we have collected 31 million in overpayment. Actually, 31 million was established as overpayments, and we have collected $28 million, which will be returned back to the PUA program. The Administrating Hearing Office has gone from hearing 40 cases last year to over 100 this year. Jackie's quite busy. We've had to hire a pro tem and hearing officer to assist with these cases so we can try and expedite these cases as quickly as possible. As you can see there, 2020, number filed, labor cases 44, PUA 43, and 2021, labor cases 43, PUA appeals were over or about 100. So it's moving up. And conditions for PUA eligibility, many people are still asking, well, am I eligible? And even though we show them the where, the how many, the why, the how, the conditions, many claimants are still not quite understanding the eligibility requirements. We'll give it to you again in this slide. So when your constituents or people who are coming to you for assistance ask you, why aren't I eligible? Perhaps you can see from this list here on the conditions for PUA eligibility, one of the reasons, or any of the reasons of how they can qualify for PUA, and it has to be a qualifying COVID-19 reason. The next 3 slides will show you that. Keep going, please. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. And keep going. Able and available to work. A claimant has to be physically able or available for work. He or she may be disqualified if they are off island or if the reason that they stated on the application is not directly related to a COVID-19 reason. Next slide, please. Just another flow chart of how hearing conducts either a request for reconsideration, or a request for to appeal a determination or redetermination. And the next slide will give you some of the resources where we have to get our rules and regs. Again, these are not CNMI laws. These are all U.S. Department of Labor laws. Next slide, please. The PUA Communication Center, our wonderful comm center, moved from outside of my building in 2020. On the left, you'll see a tent and some chairs. That's where they were sitting in the rain and the sun with the mosquitoes and the ants. We finally moved them into, not even indoors, but on a porch outside of a building that we had borrowed. That's the picture on the right. We had borrowed that building, another government building in Capitol Hill. We put them outside and it got a little bit more comfortable. There are some fans. It doesn't rain on them that much. Then we finally moved to a more conducive office for the communication center this year. These are the numbers of calls from the communication center, which Agata Camacho is in charge of. We have received over 19,000 calls between the month of January and calls. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, we do answer our phones. Sometimes claimants take between 20 minutes to 30 minutes just to clarify what is the status of their application and why aren't they being processed as quickly as they would like. More email data, total number of emails received, over 4,600 emails. We responded to over 3,600. Many of the emails is asking about status, what's going on, where's my PUA, and why am I disqualified, why am I not eligible to receive? And we try to explain to them over the phone or by email, because again, we are still in a situation where we have to be careful about the risk of transmitting the COVID-19 virus and sadly the Delta virus. And last but not least, your contacts. You notice my name's not there. I did that on purpose. Contacts for Director Eugene Tebetep, Lorenzo Aldan is here, and Sharon Palacios and Agata Camacho. These are the three supervisors that take most of the headache for me at the PUA headquarters. And with that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, for the PowerPoint presentation. We will keep the PowerPoint up in case you need to have a reference to a particular slide with respect to any of the data or financial questions that will be asked this afternoon. But before we proceed with the Q&A from the committee and myself, I would like to introduce our SNILD JGO committee members. To my left is Representative Joseph Lee Pon. Sitting next to him is Representative J.P. Sablon. To my right is Representative Danita Yangtemay, and to her right is Representative Vicente Camacho. And also we have a member participating online, and that'll be Representative Tina Sablon. And excused from this afternoon's meeting is Representative B.J. Atto. He's currently off island. So we do have enough individuals in the committee to establish a quorum. And additionally, we have the assistance of our legal counsel, Antoinette Villagomez, and also our clerk, Ms. Tiara Blanco, that will be assisting us through the process this afternoon. I do want to welcome everybody. So again, thank you for your participation this afternoon. It's very important that we meet about the PUA, FPUC, and every now and then, LWA will be part of the conversation too, because LWA is dependent on labor's PUA data as we speak this afternoon. So I'm sure you will be able to answer that question as well as we move along. So I will now open the floor for any questions from any member. Please get my attention and I will recognize you. Members? Representative Lee-Pon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Secretary, thank you for making time to come and present all this before us. I do hear you, and this is not an easy task because the money doesn't belong to the Sinamay. And when you have the feds monitoring how this money has been dispersed, regardless to what, it's difficult because when you look at our situation here, we have a high rate of much needed employment or individuals that are not here from this island. They're considered foreign workers or that don't fit the qualification of this. But again, I give you extended kudos for trying your best to make sure that this money or this assistance reaches every household here in the Sinamay. I have a couple of questions, and I'm still not keen with from the initial submission of an application and the required documentation. How long does an adjudicator would need to go over all these documents that is required before one of the applicant is, or an applicant is notified. And once all the documents are submitted and reviewed thoroughly, and no additional document is needed, what is the timeline for the adjudicator to notify the applicant that he or she qualify? And if there's no additional information or documentation needed to submit about from that time period, when does this individual receive the funding or the payment?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, each PUA coordinator is asked to do at least 10 to 20 PUA claimants per day. When I've looked at the log, the ones who have been trained since June 2020, who've been with us longer, who've had more training experience, seem to go through more than that per day because they understand the PUA program, the requirements, the fact-finding process, and they adjudicate fairly quickly. Once they're adjudicated and reviewed and processed, then they will be seeing a transaction date on their PUA application online, and it takes between 10 to 14 working days for them to see a payment, either direct deposit, if that's what they indicated on their application, or a paper check will be processed by the Department of Finance and then mailed out, and that takes another couple of days. So once someone is approved, we tell everyone it's between 10 and 15 days, depending on the mailing and the processing by our Department of Finance. If a PUA claimant does not have complete documents, that's where the holdup, the bottleneck becomes frustrating, because we ask for updated paycheck stubs or payroll timesheets or letters of certification from their employer or former employer. And those things are the ones that are taking the most time for these applicants. Other things that may take time is when we have to verify some of these foreign workers through what we call the SAVE system. It is a system that we work with the U.S. Immigration to verify the status, employment status of all foreign workers who apply for the PUA program. And so, people say, well, I've not gotten it. I've applied since this date and that date. And when we look at the PUA portal, we see that the caseworker has notified them probably a few days before, and the person still does not understand that they still have to submit these documents that we asked them a few days before. And that's really where the misunderstanding comes. Trying to get these claimants to submit documents has been quite difficult.
So everybody must have an accessibility to internet just to monitor all these things, right?
Not necessarily, Chairman. We do have PUA receivers at Building 1334 for people who want to talk to someone and they don't have access to a laptop or internet. We also have PUA coordinator stationed up in Capitol Hill.
So those services are provided. You were alluding 10 to 20 days. If this is mentioned or told to the applicant, has there been time where that 10 to 20 days exceeded for them to wait?
Many times.
And
It's not that they're waiting, we are waiting. By law, we have to give the applicants 90 days.
okay.
Yes, so they're able to try and get those documents within 3 months. For the people who are continuously claiming weekly claims, for new claimants, they have 21 days. 21 days to submit the documents. 90 and 21 days.
On your PowerPoint presentation, there's this huge number of 26,000 being disqualified. Have you broken it down by category as to why they were disqualified? Is it because they're not, how do you say, they're not eligible because of the U.S. requirement?
19,000 of the 26,000, Chairman, are actually fraudulent claims that were applied to our portal, but they were from, say, fake IDs or not really real people. They're from off island, and we deemed them ineligible because they are not here in the CNMI. you may have heard, like in the state of California, there was like $14 billion in fraudulent claims that were processed.
Wow.
Yes. So 19,000 of these disqualified claimants were from off island. The rest of them were disqualified because they did not lose their job or have reduced hours because of a COVID-19 related reason. So they were deemed disqualified.
Last, Madam Chair, uh, this overpayment issue, how did this go about? That is there someone that actually finalized any disbursement before the claimant accept that payment? And what if this claimant is an outsider and left the island? Uh, what's the process of collecting this back?
Okay, first of all, overpayments are established when a pool claimant has been paid more than he should have gotten, right? So in those cases, many of the claimants have been putting over, let's say, or underreporting their earnings on the pool application. And so they were paid more than they should have been eligible for. As for the claimants who receive pool benefits and have left the island, we have tried to send registered mail to them. Our investigators in the BPC unit are trying to contact them through friends and family. Any way that we can. We've also added their name to a fraudulent list, which will be forwarded to our FBI and to other identification hubs within the U.S. Department of Labor, so that these names and identities are put on a list of people who did not qualify for PUA, somehow received PUA, and then left, even though they may not, or they may have been aware they did not qualify for PUA.
Has there been a few of this overpayment claimant paid back their?
Quite a few, Chairman. We've been very successful in working out overpayment plans with all of the applicants who asked for that, because we understand many of them are not working or have started working with maybe 20 hours a week. And so we recognize the fact that this is a difficult situation for many of the claimants who may have received an overpayment through an error, through a mistake. We've collected over almost $100,000 from HUA claimants who are paying it twice a month, $25, and they receive $13,000, for example, and say, oh, I don't have it anymore. I've paid some bills. And we ask them, okay, what can you afford to pay back? Because this is a federal public benefit and it must be paid back if you were overpaid.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Madam Chair, I'll yield for the first round. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Lipan. I recognize now Representative John Paul Sablan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Madam Secretary Benavente, for coming this afternoon and your great team. I want to thank you guys for working so hard for delivering the PUA program. I have several questions, most especially on your slide. You have mentioned that we have a total of 706 million under the PUA finances, and so far to this day, cumulative expenditures is at 209. Since we know that PUA program is almost closing out, what is the outlook of exhausting this 700 in totality receive PUA finance?
Mr. Chairman, that's such a good question, because I've had questions brought to me. What happens after September 4? And we still haven't adjudicated a claim that's been sitting in our office for several weeks or maybe several months. And I reassure everyone that every PUA claimant will be adjudicated and reviewed even beyond September 4, beyond October 4. This is why the team will still be on board, working hard through the year, through next year, I'm predicting. As far as the amount to be expended, I can only estimate that if we were to pay out the remaining 2,500 claimants who are still waiting to be adjudicated, we could come close to expending 700 million. And if we don't, we return that money back to US DOL.
Thank you for that information. I know in your present PowerPoint, you mentioned that your BPC unit were very successful in collecting out of the 31 million, 28 million in overpayment. uh, are we still awaiting? Have you guys consulted with those individuals that have overpayment and have perhaps worked out a payment plan with DOL? Can you expound on that if there is such dialogue with applicants that were overpaid?
Yes, Representative JP, we do communicate with the pool of claimants who have been deemed overpaid. Ms. Sharon Palacios and her team of 11 staff complete the audits, and then they establish any overpayment schedule. And then we work with the claimant to try and make payments to the overpayment that would not be harmful to them or push them down into a poverty level, because those are instructions that we also receive from US Dole. Make the overpayment collections, but don't push anyone down further into the poverty level. That's not our purpose. Our purpose is to prevent fraudulent claims. Some of these claims were overpaid by mistake on the part of the claimant. That's what we do. Investigations are carried out by the BPC unit, and claimants have the option of filing for appeals or filing for requests for redetermination from Jackie Nicholas's office. So there are options that we provide the claimant if they don't agree with the decision of the adjudicator.
Thank you for that information. With regards to the first PUA, have every applicant in the first PUA have been paid already?
Yes,
And,
except for those that did not meet qualifications, meet the eligibility
Right,
requirements. or
like
did
such
not-
as CW workers that did not
in the first
qualify
round,
in the
that's
first
correct.
round.
That's correct.
How are we going about with the second and third? Since data is already established through the first PUA, are we getting, are you guys getting uh, probably faster in processing with the second and third, perhaps?
Yes, we are moving a little faster because we've established eligible claimants who are still applying for weekly claims. Many of our claimants are so understanding when they do submit documents. That makes them move on to the next step, which would be PUA 3. As you may have read in the press release the other day, we issued, not we, but the PUA program issued $11 million to over 1,800 PUA claimants. That money is flowing into our economy and helping many of our families and friends. And so it is moving a little bit faster, but we still have a lot of work to do and to follow up on requirements, reporting requirements, financial reports, data reports with US Dole. It's a very tedious process, Chairman.
Thank you. And one last, Madam Chair, I want to commend you guys for reaching out to US Dole, and you guys were able to get an extension of 30 days till August 4. What are the chances in the event that we don't push most of what we are trying to push in PUA? What is the I guess my question: what is the chances of getting another extension? Is this would be the first and last extension?
Well, we never know till we ask, Chairman. We have been
Fair
told by US Dole that we will continue to process PUA applications until we are finished. So all those who have been submitted, stamped, received, will be processed even though we're going beyond October 4th, 2021.
Fair enough. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Representative JP Sablan. I now recognize Representative Vicente Camacho.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome. Just a couple questions. What is your process to collecting overpayments? I heard what you said earlier, but I wasn't clear with the actual process.
Okay, I have a PowerPoint in front of me, an overview of the BPC investigation and overpayment notices. So PUA headquarters would be the one to adjudicate a claim. If a claimant is found to have been suspected of fraudulent activity or an overpayment may have occurred, then the BPC unit headed by Ms. Palacios investigates and becomes very involved in the setup of communicating with the claimant. Investigation will ensue and reveal whatever is wrong with this PUA claimant's application, and then it will go to a determination by one of the auditors in Ms. Sharon's department or section, and they have a chance to appear before the administrating hearing officer, or just agree, yes, you're right, I was overpaid and I'm going to pay it back this much every 2 weeks. It's not a difficult process. It's a matter of communicating with the claimant. This is why you're overpaid.
But that's not always the case, though. A reason why I asked that, I have run into people that were told verbally that they need to return to Department of Labor because they had an overpayment and they needed to pay back 1,000. I mean, there's no no notice, no paperwork, and they did go and pay. So my question is, what happened to that money? There's no. If you tell me verbally to come and return $1,000, I would ask you why. But there's no paperwork, none of that, and this I witnessed. So there is something wrong with the process. And if case B, I will bring in all those witnesses that were told verbally to come and return $1,000 out of that amount. No paperwork, nothing.
Mr. Chairman, there's no money received at our department. All funds returned goes to the Department of Finance after a payment voucher is given to the claimant by our unit. And so we
The
don't
question
receive,
really, is it a written notice or is it verbal notice?
it's always a written notice.
These people did not get a written notice. They
We
were
do.
verbally told to take the money back and return what was overpayment. With that said, I got one more question. How many spouses have received any assistance for their deceased husband or wife? Do you know anything about that?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, what is the question?
Spouses that have passed supposedly are eligible to receive the PUA or whatever they're entitled to. Do you guys know anything about that?
I remember a couple of poor claimants who have passed, and there were some legal documents that had to be obtained in order for the spouse of the deceased to be able to either retrieve the check or be able to access the funds from the PUA benefits. So there is some legal requirements for in that case, Mr. Chairman. We do not issue payments to just anyone. It has to be the qualified PUA claimant. And if they're deceased, of course, then we look at the situation. The claimant was eligible. If he was audited and everything was all clear, then if the spouse has legal authority or power of attorney, they would be able to accept the check for the PUA claimant deceased.
Okay. Were there any that collected from the spouse that passed? Any claims approved or
I
any
believe-
numbers?
I can only remember about two of them. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I don't really pull that data as far as deceased PUA claimants, and we don't have that much. I can only remember of two out of the thousands.
Because I do know of two. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I yield for now.
Thank you, Representative Camacho. I will now recognize Representative Danita Yangtamay.
Just a couple of questions. Oh, thank you, Chair, and welcome, Madam Secretary. Just a couple of questions from viewers. Maybe it was presented, but they probably missed it. How long does it take for personal info to be updated or the portal to be updated on the portal?
Per applicant, I'm seeing that it takes between 45 minutes to an hour to input data.
Because she said it's been a month, and whenever she goes up on there, it was never updated. Okay, so next question. Do applicants need to apply to 3 jobs every week? I think that was
The answer to that is yes, and it's on the fact sheet that a work search requirement of at least 3 jobs is mandatory.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I yield.
Thank you, Representative Yangtamay. I guess that brings the circle to me to ask my questions. But to any members, if anything comes up in your mind, just catch my attention and I'll yield the floor to you. So let's begin with my inquiries, Madam Secretary. Thank you very much again for your time and for your team coming in this afternoon. I just want to take notice of this, Madam Secretary, that we may not be able to complete this process. We anticipate maybe up to maybe 4 o'clock only this afternoon. And if we don't address all the necessary issues and concerns, that I have, and perhaps also for the other members of this committee, I do want to bring to your attention that we will recess this inquiry regarding the PUA FPOC program, and we will continue on August 20, 2021 at 1 p.m. in the afternoon as well. So please mark your calendar. I don't believe we're going to finish this by 4 o'clock this afternoon, just so that everybody can go home. Let me begin with my questions. Can you take me to your slide regarding the collected amounts of overpayment? We don't see Representative Tina online. What happened? Is she online? Okay. As we're going through that, Representative Tina, if you have any questions, please just holler and I'll yield the floor to you. If you could hear me. Okay. All right. Okay. Are you there, Madam Secretary? Okay. So financials is something that I'm very interested in. And what caught my attention in your PowerPoint presentation is the word collected. Okay. When you say collected, in other words, you have received that amount of money of 28,027,428.06. In my review of the initial Open Government Act to your office, it seems like all of the amounts are intact with respect to the awards from the U.S. Department of Labor, correct? So my question on this is, where is this $28 million, 428.06 being kept with respect to any business unit within the CNMI central government? Because you used the word collected.
As I mentioned earlier, Madam Chair, all payments, overpayments are given to the Department of Finance. Are you asking for a specific account?
Exactly. So I want you to review that this afternoon. When I did my Open Government Act, I specifically said anything and everything pertaining to PUA and FPUC. And when you make a public statement like that on your PowerPoint presentation, which becomes a property of this body, the legislature, which is a separate branch of government, I do expect to see that particular documentation of where is this money being held at and under what respective business unit, because it is federal money. So that's one concern, to please get that information to this committee.
So noted.
Moving right along, I'm going to read some of my questions that I've prepared through my review of this thick document. And I thank your department for taking the time to review and try to extract the necessary documentations, though it's not all there as I reviewed them, obviously. And I did submit additional two specific open government acts against to your office regarding the program. And some of the financial information is actually quite old. It's 1 year old. As a matter of fact, one of the fund status reports goes back to July of 2020. We are 1 year ahead today. And I was expecting to see something like that to date, not 1 year ago. So let's move on to some of the questions. Madam Secretary, on January 29, 2021, you came out on the local paper informing PUA applicants to disregard the 1099-G because it's erroneous. Can you explain why the people are receiving 1099-G forms that are erroneous? And I believe also the secondary 1099-G that came out, some of them were getting errors on that particular form. Additionally, and just recently, I received a call the other day from a PUA applicant who have yet to receive her claim. Perhaps maybe she's going through adjudication, that she's been asked to return an overpayment, and she has never received a single penny of PUA money, to the point where she is being asked to produce a copy of her bank financial statement to show the evidence that the money did not pass through her account, under the insistence of the CNMI Department of Labor. And I will give you a claim number, 116.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, please do
Mhm.
not say that number in public.
Okay,
That's
I'm at
a-
116. I will not review the last three.
Thank you.
Um, It's not revealing the name, it's just a number, but I will not review the case number.
Thank
If you're
you.
interested in that number, let me know.
Yes,
I would like to
please.
bring that to your attention.
Definitely.
And that's very important because these are the concerns that are coming into the office. Again, individuals are letting you guys know that they have not received a single dime. And why is it that all of these things are happening? So can you please explain the reason why these individuals are facing this issue?
Yes, Madam Chair. With regards to the 1099-G, we admit there have been errors in the PUA process and application. There are some claimants who say they have not received a penny of PUA claims, and there are some claimants who say they have not received a penny, and yet when we receive their bank statement, which we are allowed to ask for, we can see two deposits to account for $15,000, and this is the same claimant who says, I didn't receive a penny of PUA. And so to verify with the claimant that there was no money involved, no money deposited, no claims deposited, no benefits deposited, we kindly and respectfully ask the claimant to upload a bank statement so that we can just verify that and resolve the issue. I have to my right Sharon Palacios and Vincent Sublan, who are handling the BPC unit, and also for the 1099-G. If you want more clarification on that issue, I'd be happy to ask them to respond to that.
I am aware of what a 1099-G is all about. That's a tax form. At the end of the year, a person takes their 1099 income form and attaches that to their 1040. So I'm fully aware of what that is, but the concern is individuals that are being called upon, being asked on to pay something back that they never received. So that's the concern, and I will share the case number. And it's not the only one. There's many others that I would think that you would query your database on your data and try to identify these individuals. I'm not going to spend my time trying to give you guys individual case numbers because I've delivered more than 245 unique consent forms to your office, and every day we get that as we continue to deliver it as well. Thank you for that clarification. Oh, sure. That's the PowerPoint? Sure. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. Maybe it can fold down or something? No? It's stiff? Okay, we'll figure it out. Yeah. All right. Can you see each other now? Is that all good? Okay. I want to make sure you see her. Okay. A little bit of humor this afternoon. Everybody's got a little bit kind of tense. Relax. We're going to have some fun. But really, there's a lot of issues that are being raised by the community and the applicants, and we do have to address them. So again, today may not be the final day, and I gave you the other day that we shall come back. My next question is, it's all about data on this next question. What is the unique claimants that were paid for the first PUA benefits period? Now, that's the period between March 28, 2020 to December 19, 2020 for a total of 39 weeks, correct? That is the first PUA period.
I believe the period started in February, Madam Chair.
You need to what?
I believe the pandemic assistance program started in February 2020, not
Okay,
March.
so that's fantastic. That gives additional 4 weeks, right? Okay, yeah. So mathematically speaking, that's right.
Right.
4 more weeks.
Right.
So the question is how many unique claimants were paid for the first PUA benefits period? Okay, claimants. We understand each other in that? So it's February 2020. I guess you get the data to us later on, or are you able to answer that this afternoon?
Yeah, I get that data to you, Madam Chair. I
Okay.
don't want to give you a wrong number.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's move right along. How many unique claimants were paid for the first PUA benefits up to period ending August 15, 2020? And within the same unique PUA claimants, how many were qualified for LWA which is benefits period, August 1, 8, and 15. According to Guard Patrick Guerrero's email to my office, dated July 8, 2021, a total of 6,301 claimants were paid for LWA. I did send an email to Patrick to update me on the data. He has yet to respond to me because obviously LWA is dependent on labor's PUA data, okay? And I know that the article came out today or yesterday about additional $11 million that was paid out for PUA, FPUC, and LWA. You chop out LWA, you still fall below 30% threshold of expenditure ratio for the total amount of money received from the U.S. Department of Labor of $709 million. This is very important. Why we asked the question on data is because LWA, from the last time we did the oversight, there's still about $2.2 million that are available for distribution to those qualified claimants for LWA time period. And that falls within the first PUA benefits period. Are we clear on that? Are you able to answer these questions today, or do you need time to get back to me on that?
I'd like to address a couple of things, Madam Chair.
Okay.
An LWA benefit will be paid to a PUA claimant if they were eligible for at least $100 of
Understood.
PUA during the period of the weeks you mentioned, August 1, August 8, and August 15. I'll get you the exact number and the exact amount.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Because the reason why I raised that question, there are still some cases that pass through my office that have yet to receive their LWA benefits. Okay. And that's the reason why it ties into your data. Let's move right along to my next question. Under your unemployment insurance program letter 16-20, change 4, dated January 8, 2021. Under your continued assistance, provided changes to the program under the PUA program. One of these changes added was Section 3 with small letter 7, Roman numeral 7, VII, which states, and I quote, permitting states to waive PUA overpayments under certain conditions. Under this same UIPO letter, it went on to provide more clarification under Section 21C, 2, authority to waive overpayments, new, which states Section 201D of the Continued Assistance Act amends Section 2102D of the CARES Act and authorizes states to waive the repayment if the state determines that the payment of PUA was without fault on the part of any such individual, and such repayment would be contrary to equity and good conscience. This waiver authority applies to overpayments that meet this criteria at any time since the PUA program began. Madam Secretary, your implementation plan states on February 1st, 2021, as your policy implementation date to quote, waive no fault overpayments, unquote. That is what is stated in your implementation plan. That is dated 2/1/21 to waive no fault overpayments. And your implementation plan also shows as none of any waivers for claimants has begun. We clearly know that many cases are of no fault to the applicants. And this is the reason why I raised this provision of the documents that are provided by the U.S. Department of Labor as the implementation begins with the PUA program from inception to date. And as a matter of fact, it's up to change number 5 on the unemployment program letter. I want to read on because I did a pretty thorough review, and that's the reason why I had to write down some of the concerns that came into the office. And I'll give you one example. A mother with minor children was called by the Department of Labor and crying on the telephone when she called my office that the Department of Labor, after her receiving her PUA and FPUC benefits, is now calling on her to return more than $3,000 of overpayment. That is very heartbreaking. And she said on the phone, Senator, it's not my fault. I clearly provided them all the documentation. And isn't it true that when they review all the documentation that I submitted, my payroll, my check stub, my timesheets, whatever it is that you guys ask for under the sun, that you are responsible for calculating that WBA, correct? And how is it that that error happened, that of overpayment of more than $3,000 went out to her, and now she's being asked to pay back, and she will not get her PUA 2 or PUA 3 unless she makes a payment or pays back the amount of money that is considered an overpayment. So I do want to bring that to your attention. And I cited all of the statements under UIPO 1620, change 4, giving the authority actually to the state grantee to exercise its prudent judgment and review of each particular case at no fault to the person, that they can be given a waiver of this particular overpayment, and let the state grantee, like the CNMI government, carry on the burden of that mistake. So that's why I bring that to your attention, Madam Secretary.
Madam Chair, if I may, to date, as of today, we have waived 7 applicants, 7 poor claimants in the amount of $90,000.
How much?
90,000.
90,000?
840, exactly.
I
as
am
of
happy to
today.
hear that, and I hope
Yes.
your numbers go up higher
Me too.
as you review.
Yes. I mean, I don't hope that the numbers go up, but I'm hoping that we can resolve. I can't speak to that particular claimant who calls you, but I can tell you generally, many of these claimants who call you are telling you one side of the story, and they do not understand the complete
I understand.
picture. Yeah. And so we're very recognizing the fact that this is a stressful situation for everyone, mothers, daughters, husbands, wives, relatives, and friends of my own team. So whoever comes to ask for help, please send them our way. We will assist.
Which I've been doing from the last conversation, which
At
you want
least
to email.
245 of them.
Right. I think they delivered more than that as of yesterday and today. And
Yes,
every day
ma'am.
we get it,
Yes,
except
ma'am.
for weekends. But I do get calls over the weekends, but that's okay, and messages.
And
And
so
it's
do
going to
I.
continue to go on.
Yeah.
Okay.
And may I speak to that point, Madam Chair?
Mhm.
I want to ask this, respectfully ask this body, when you receive requests from full claimants to assist them, I would like to ask that you do not provide them a false sense of hope that you're going to be able to process or expedite the approval application, because that's not fair to them or to us. We are only following the rules, and we want to help everyone who applies for PUA. But we are not about to break a single rule that's been mandated to us by the U.S. Department of Labor and by this body. And so please, 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 when you get requests from poor claimants,
If you have those kind of concerns, Madam Secretary, with individual members of the committee, you're free to
I have the concern with
communicate.
all of you who get
Yeah.
requests from poor claimants. It's a general request. I'm not accusing or demanding. I'm respectfully requesting not to provide any false hope to the claimants, because they come to me and say, well, Miss So-and-so said she's going to expedite. And I'm like, oh, okay. And Mr. So-and-so said they promised to help me expedite. I'm like, okay, but here's the rules. And so,
Thank you.
yeah.
I'll yield a few minutes of my time to Representative Vicente Camacho.
Thank you. And that's in one of my line of questionings. I was going to ask you, how do you feel when a representative calls you up and asks you to process something? Because apparently this person have had a long wait, a lot of lies according to them. I checked their stuff. They're correct. Why do I have to call? Why do I have to process these people? That's your job. So apparently there's a disconnect somewhere, right? Why do they come to us if the process works? That's my question. Thank you.
They
Thank
come
you.
to you? Is that the question you're asking me? Why do they come to you? They come to you because they feel you can provide them some assistance. I'm not objecting to them asking for assistance. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it really depends on where they are in the process, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Camacho, and thank you, Madam Secretary. I would like to recognize Representative Tina Sablan to ask questions.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me? The audio coming through? Can you hear me?
Can they hear her?
Okay. Okay. You can hear me. Okay, I can continue. Good afternoon, Secretary Benavente, and good afternoon to your staff as well. I just on the issue of constituent referrals that our offices make. Like many of my colleagues, I have also referred and followed up and made inquiries with your office on behalf of hundreds of constituents. And I do want to assure you that we do not give any false hopes to these constituents, and we tell them that CNMI labor does not necessarily timely respond to our emails or calls either, but that we will keep trying, and we do. And we have been getting slowly but surely some positive responses from constituents who are saying that they are getting payments, but there continue to be these lingering concerns where people are getting partial payments or but are still awaiting the rest of their claims. And I just wanted to share with you a list. We went through our casework files, and there are some issues that come up again and again, and I wanted to share them with you for the record, and you're welcome to respond to any or all of them as I run through this list. It's just a few items. One is that we have constituents who get calls from the Department of Labor to come in and pick up their checks, but then when they go to the department, they're told for whatever reason that there is actually no check, and it's not clear to them the reasons why. Second, they're told, when they follow up either online through their portal, or they try to call DOL, or they try to email the status of their application, they're told the same thing again and again, that the status is in progress, and this can be for months and even for over a year. We have some claimants whose applications from last year have still not been paid out. We are also hearing some frustration about nobody answering the phone at the Department of Labor, and that when calls are answered, that their questions cannot be answered by whoever picks up the phone, and then they're told that they will get a call back, but they never do. Second, there was a question, and this is going back to the issue that the chair was raising about these overpayments, and the question was, who is at fault when the Department of Labor gives out checks to claimants, and then the Department of Labor demands that these funds be returned when they have already spent this money? And we have heard many heartbreaking cases, and in the case of our office, most recently, we had an elderly woman who was taking care of her elderly husband. He's sick, he has underlying conditions, and after months of receiving PUA payments, FPUC, LWA, to now be told that she is actually not qualified and she now owes the department tens of thousands of dollars when she's had no other source of income and has been unable to find work and is actually afraid to work, especially now with the Delta variant. And one question I'm hoping you could answer for us today is, what is the basis for granting waivers on for these no-fault overpayments? Because it seems like there are a lot of constituents in this position, and I'm glad, like Chairwoman Edith has said, I'm also glad that some waivers are being granted, but I'd like to hear more about what your basis is for granting them, and why more aren't being granted. Another issue that was raised was and it's more of a customer service issue, where we're hearing from constituents who say that they are being treated rudely by staff who either don't know the answers to their questions, or are just abrupt, or don't get back to them. I mean, this issue seems to come up again and again, or they have to submit documents again that they've already submitted before. And then just to wrap this up, there were also, we have some constituents who were given payment schedules with the amount of money that they could expect to receive, and then were later informed by labor staff that they actually won't be getting that money, and there was no explanation as to why, or at least they didn't understand why. And then there were questions about issues with the portal. These keep coming up again and again. They're getting locked out. They can't seem to do weekly submissions anymore, and they can't seem to get anybody on the phone or online to help them figure out why. So those are just some of the concerns, the main concerns that we seem to be seeing a lot in our casework. And if we could go back to the question that I asked regarding overpayment waivers, what is your basis for reviewing and granting those?
Is that the only question at this time?
No, that
basis
is my
for
question at
overpayments.
this time. I
Right.
do have a few more.
Okay, I've written 8. So which one does Representative Sablan want me to address?
The question regarding the basis for reviewing and granting waivers on overpayments.
Based on federal guidance, Representative Sablan, we do have the reasons for overpayments to be waived and the reasons for a fault defined as something that was submitted by the claimant, the individual who is applying for POA benefits, and the statements that were provided were either incorrect or they failed to provide any documents, or they knew that they should not have gotten this second check or second payment. And so to waive an overpayment, there are 2 reasons. Whether for federal guidance, it says that you have to be guided by contrary to equity and good conscience. As I mentioned earlier, we don't want to place anyone below the poverty level and take money away that would be needed for basic necessities to live, to eat, to pay for their power. But overpayments is an overpayment by a claimant who understands they were overpaid. There is nothing that we want to do more than to help everyone who needs help. I can say that for a fact, that the 50 or so staff and the team who's here, our mission is to help everyone. And so you're hearing comments and complaints and reasons and so forth. We also hear the other side of thank you for the payments. Thank you for the benefits. Thank you for helping out. Now I understand why you made me turn in bank statements, check stubs, payroll, timesheets. Now I understand. It's not our purview to make everyone do this work. It is a mandate by the federal government to turn in these documents so that we can utilize these funds in the correct manner. We, the CNMI, have something to be proud for. And you can see from Mr. Malares' email, the CNMI as a state has done everything it can to prevent fraudulent claims, and it is doing everything it can to help the people who deserve and are eligible for POA claimants.
But I do have limited time, Secretary Benavente. So is there an application process for applying for these overpayment waivers? Like, I just want to better understand that. So when we do have constituents who are at the brink of being pushed right back down below the poverty level or are dealing with these issues of equity, we can help give them a little bit more information to understand how they can avail of it.
Thank you, Representative Sablan. There is a process, and Ms. Nicholas is here beside me, and she's showing me all the slides about how to appeal or file for an overpayment waiver or file for a redetermination. There's nothing more that we want to do than to assist our people. So if they feel they've been judged as overpaid incorrectly, please bring that to our attention. We will work with the claimant to resolve the issue.
Okay, so it is the appeals process then. That's where they can apply for this relief.
That's correct.
And if in the event they believe that our constituents believe that they need some legal assistance and they need additional time to prepare for an appeals hearing, then they can also request that. And because I know that sometimes these appeals are, in most of these cases, these appeals are time barred, right? So even if it's beyond whatever it is, 15 days, they can still ask for additional time to find legal representation and prepare their appeal.
Yes, it depends on a case basis, Representative Sablan, but yes, we are willing to wait longer than the 15-day limitation.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, and thank you for addressing that question. And so I also wanted to turn now to the documents that you provided to the chair on July 7th, 2021. This is in response to the chair's Open Government Act request regarding de-obligation documentation of $14.9 million in overpayments collected and returned. And it wasn't clear to me, maybe you could just help me understand that. Do you have that document in front of you?
No, Representative Sablan, I don't have that document from July 7, 2021.
Well, in any case, I wanted to verify the user ID, do those indicate unique individuals?
Yes, Representative Sablan, each user ID is for an individual.
Okay, and then when there's there's like a column for status, and sometimes those items indicate sent, sometimes they indicate cleared, sometimes there's nothing at all, sometimes there's the word audited. What does that status mean in the data that you provided?
Representative Sablan, can you please repeat the last part of your question? What does that status?
Sure. What is status? The column for status in the data that you provided. There's either a notation for sent or cleared or audited, or sometimes it's just blank. It wasn't clear to me what status means. So could you clarify that?
I think you're referring to the overpayment status.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm referring
Okay.
to. What does it mean?
So
in that
for a
column?
claimant who's been flagged for overpayment status, that means they need to come in and resolve the issue with us. An audit has been conducted on that claimant's application or weekly claims, and we've noticed that a check stop will say this claimant earned $400, and by mistake, an error, the claimant maybe claimed only $200 on the portal or on their application, and that's when the audit reveals the errors or discrepancy in wages.
So if that overpayment record is marked sent under status, that means they've been sent like a letter, a notice that they've received overpayments?
Yes.
Is that, okay. And if it's marked cleared, that means the issue has been resolved.
I'm sorry, one more time?
If it's marked cleared under status, that means the issue has been resolved. Is that
Yes,
correct?
it does.
Okay, thank you. That certainly clarifies things. And then just a quick question about payment cycle and payment number. Could you just explain what that column is in the data that you provided?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Payment cycle, there's a column for payment cycle with all these different dates, and then there's a column for payment number. And I just wanted to understand what that means.
Okay, I'm going to let Sharon answer this question for you, Representative Sablan, please.
So what you see there in the overpayment log, payment cycle, you said, and payment number,
Yeah,
that's what you see on the transaction in the portal. That's for finance N. So when we compose a payment certification for the claimant to pay, we need to add that information. Yes.
I see. So these are notes for finance. So like the payment cycle is the cycle at which these checks would have been released?
That's the payment cycle that they were paid out of.
Oh,
Where they were
and the
overpaid
payment
in.
number is that like a check number?
Yes. It could be a check number. If it's a direct deposit, it's just a transaction.
Okay. And so the records show overpayments of thousands of dollars, sometimes tens of thousands even for some of the individuals in these records. And so these user IDs, these are unique cases of individuals having received these thousands of dollars in overpayments, right? I'm understanding that correctly.
Correct.
Okay, and then the records also show thousands of dollars in overpayments made to hundreds of out-of-state individuals. And I think you said there were over 1,000 such individuals out of state that were marked fraudulent in the record. So I thought I recalled you testifying, Secretary Beneventi, before the legislature that out-of-state payments were actually intercepted and not paid out. But it looks from the records like payments were made and that there were paper checks with numbers on them that appear to have even been released without documents. Could you explain that? How did that happen?
So with the portal, when it gives them a payment transaction, they print out the check for it. And so the reason why you see it on the overpayment log is because it was processed. And what we did to intercept was void it. So that's why you see it on the log as paid back. because it never
So
went
the
out.
checks were processed, they were printed, but they weren't actually mailed out to these people.
Correct, they were routed to void by Department of Finance.
I see. And where is that in the records that were provided? Where does it indicate that these checks were actually sent back and voided?
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Where in the records that were provided does it indicate that these out-of-state payments were sent back, or these checks were sent back to finance and voided? Where would we find that?
I'm not too sure if you're able to see the comments there, but it does say void and what day it was routed to finance and stamped.
I'm sorry, which column would that have been?
To my understanding, it's the very end.
Very-
Not too sure if you have that information.
Yeah, no, the records that were provided end at payment method. So perhaps there are some columns that are missing. Yeah.
Sorry?
Okay.
Oh.
I'm sorry, did you say something?
Are you still answering her question, or Rep. Tina, are you getting your answers or your questions answered?
Wanted to verify, are there additional columns to these records that do not appear in the documents, or I didn't hear the answer to that.
I'm not too sure what you have. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, maybe this is something that we could clarify in questions for the record afterwards, yeah? And so I also just wanted to better understand then, like what, I'd like to see some documentation that that monies were actually released or returned back to, I guess it would be the U.S. Department of Labor. And I don't see that. Is that going to be documentation that you'll provide after this meeting, Secretary Benavente?
Yes, Representative Sablan, we will provide you the documents that you're requesting.
Okay.
We would probably have to
Um,
request the Department of Finance for some of these documents, but we will try and obtain them for you shortly.
Okay. And then going back to what you were saying about working with beneficiaries to correct their 1099s, particularly for those who received 1099s that showed or notices of overpayment for money that they didn't actually receive. Where are we in making all those corrections? Has Labor completed that process?
Mr. Sablan Vincent, here's your chance to explain. I'm sorry, Representative Sablan, my throat is hurting. I'm going to ask some of these questions to be referred to my team on the
Sure.
right. Thank you.
Do you need
Maybe
some
the
water,
director,
Secretary?
Provide some water.
Sorry, could you repeat your question, ma'am?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, where are we in the process of correcting people's 1099s for those who received documentation of overpayment and didn't actually receive that money?
So in regards to the overpayment, if they did receive a notice of overpayment, we do ask the claimants to contact us so we can settle the issue. We either verify through bank statements to prove or disprove that they received the funds, or if they're unable to. It takes longer, but we do request transaction tracing from finance.
Okay, and where are we though in terms of making all the corrections? Are you still seeing people coming in with complaints about their 1099s?
Yes, we do, because due to the 1099 being a tax form having to be filed with their 1040 every year, they've been noticing that their 1099 does not match their records. So
Right.
when Rev and Tax contacts the claimants, they identify them to come to myself and some of my other team members of the Benefit Payment Control Unit. And we verify through, of course, bank statements and financial traces.
Okay, thank you. And one issue I wanted to also better understand was why Labor was advising claimants to cash their checks, even with overpayments, and return funds to Treasury in cash. You know, we are aware of cases where people were bringing up thousands of dollars in cash to turn over to the Treasury. And I just wanted to understand that, like, why did it have to be in cash?
That's really up to the claimant. They take three forms of payment, which is cash, cashier's check, and a debit card. So typically that's up to the claimant and how they want to pay their overpayment.
Uh-huh. Okay. So maybe that was also the instruction, though, that they were getting from staff, so even though they were getting advice or instructions that it had to be in cash, it didn't actually have to be cash money, thousands of dollars turned over to finance, right?
That's
That
correct.
could be something clarifying. Okay. And just a couple more, Madam Chair, and then I will be done, at least for this afternoon. I wanted to understand also, you mentioned that you make referrals for fraudulent claimants and their identities to the FBI. Are you working with the local FBI for that? Did you hear my question?
Yes, Representative Sablan. It is, most of our information, if not all, are being sent to the Office of the Inspector General, not the local FBI.
I see. Okay, so you're working with headquarters. Correct. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, Representative Sablan, what was the question?
So you're working with the U.S. Department of Labor headquarters to make these referrals for fraudulent claims and the
Yes.
identities of these people.
That is correct.
Okay, and the Office of the Inspector General. Okay, got it.
Correct.
And then under what circumstances would PUA beneficiaries be advised to write letters to the Secretary personally to request action on their claims?
Under what circumstances, if I may ask to repeat your question, are PUA claimants advised to write a letter to the Secretary regarding their circumstances? Is that your question?
The question is, under what circumstances, in what situations would PUA beneficiaries be advised by staff to write letters to you, the Secretary, personally to request action on their claims?
Well, all claimants are reviewed, applications are reviewed. I have been receiving hundreds of letters from claimants who are requesting for an expedited application so that they can tend to personal and emergency matters. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and that is actually, I wanted to probe that a little bit more. So there is a process then. If there is some kind of emergency or some sort of urgent situation, there is some process in your protocols for people to write to you personally, and then there would be expedited action in that.
Yes, and provided that everything is complete with the pool applicant's claims, we try to assist anyone who asks for an expedited claims to be processed.
I see, and you've received hundreds of these requests for expedited action.
My department has, yes.
Okay, and then are you the only person reviewing that, or is there also a
The team
that's
that we see
designated to
here
do it?
are all reviewing it, from the supervisors
I
to
didn't
the
hear
call
that.
center. The team that is in this room now are reviewing it. The supervisors and the directors receive these expedited letters, and we try and review them and
Okay,
expedite
and
them.
then the process is they review these applications and they make recommendations to you, and then you decide. Is that how that works?
I'm sorry, Representative Sablan, one more time, please.
So the process is that your team of supervisors will review these requests for expedited action, and then they will make their recommendations to you, and then you decide from there. Is that the process?
No, the recommendation comes from the team, and the team will process as quickly as possible. They've already been aware of why we expedite claims, and many of these reasons include a medical emergency or a death in the family.
Okay. Do you have any data on how many applications have been expedited under this process?
Your question is how many applications have been expedited under this process?
Yeah. Do you have data for that?
No, I don't. We can look back, but that would have to mean looking back in each individual file. I'd really have to say probably in the thousands.
You're not tracking that specifically then?
I'm sorry?
You're not tracking that? Labor is not tracking that specifically in your data?
We're not required to track that type of data.
Okay then, thank you. And finally, there have been quite a few concerns raised about the portal that's being used for PUA. Concerns about glitches, lockouts, it's not user-friendly since the very beginning. And I do understand from the records that you provided that this was a sole source contract that was awarded in May 2020, and I also saw that that contract just got extended. And there is a certification letter in that file from the sales and marketing director for Geographic Solutions that attests that they are the only company that can provide the particular services that I guess Labor was seeking for the software. Could you just give us some background about that? Was that verified independently, and why was it necessary to integrate with the Higher Marianas Regional Employment System rather than bidding out the service?
As you recall, in 2020, when the CARES Act was passed and the CNMI signed the agreement with the Department of Labor, U.S. Department of Labor, Geographic Solution was the portal vendor that was already on board with the Department of Labor for its WIOA program, the Workforce Investment Opportunities Act Agency Administration. At that time, Geographic Solution was the only company available that could handle the PUA program for the CNMI Department of Labor at that time.
But I guess I'm trying to understand how was that verified? Like, I mean, did we just take their word for it, or was there some kind of independent verification that happened? Did we try to see if there were other vendors that could provide these services? I mean, just in light of all the glitches that we've seen and the many technical issues and complaints that at least we've been hearing about. I'm sure you've experienced frustration on your side as well. You deal with that program every day.
I'm sorry, Representative Sablan, what is your question?
The question is, did you verify independently that there were no other vendors that could provide these services?
Yes, we did. At the time, the CNMI was just coming off of the DUA program, the Disaster Unemployment Assistance Program, and that vendor was one person handling perhaps about 5,000 to 6,000 claims, period. When we saw the impact of the COVID-19 in the CNMI, we knew there was going to be more than 5,000 claimants, and we received almost 40,000. There's no perfect vendor, online portal vendor, and we have had many issues with this portal vendor, and I'm sure you're all aware of the issues because they come to you and complain, why I had so many problems being locked out, my password, I forgot, I don't remember it, and we're trying to help each PUA claimant again. And so at that time, Geographic Solution was already on board. They were the ones that came to us and said, this is what we can do. And at the time, we had also vetted this but the situation with U.S. Department of Labor, and they said, go ahead and proceed. We were rushing to assist thousands of people who are already losing their jobs because of the economy.
Okay. And have they been responsive to the complaints and the concerns that labor is bringing to them to make corrections in their program?
I'm sorry, one more time, please, Representative Sablan.
Is Geographic Solutions responsive when you or your staff bring these technical issues, these glitches that need corrections? Like, do they respond timely to the issues and make the corrections?
Yes, they respond timely. In the first year, we had about 360 what we call work orders. These are problems with the portal. That's almost one a day, yeah, in 1 year. All the territories in the Pacific were utilizing geographic solution as well at that time. And who predicted that there would be these so many issues, you know, the mix up with Pua Guam, Palau Pua. Who could have predicted that the overwhelming portal applications would come from 19,000 fraudulent claims? Who could have predicted that? No one. So yes, there have been timely responses, and we also have periodic conference calls, and we're in constant communication with our online portal vendor. And to note, their contract will expire at the end of September.
Okay, so September is the end of this contract. And I guess just to kind of wrap this up, like going forward then, I understand that Department of Labor has received this technical assistance grant to develop an unemployment insurance program for the CNMI. Are you considering continuing this contract with Geographic Solutions, or will you be looking at other options?
We are considering all options for this program. The UI program is something that I've mentioned in the past before this body and in the House. It is not something I want to discuss further because we are still working out the details as far as the implementation plan, budgets and expenses and so forth. Any vendor has the option to respond to an RFP or an ITB at this point in time if one is issued by the Department of Labor.
Thank you. Thank you for addressing those questions. And I do look forward to seeing your responses for the other questions for the record that you could get back to us on. And with that, I yield, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Tina. Before I request for this, and actually, but after I request for this, we're going to take a 5-minute short recess, and then we'll get right back again to the Q&A. Madam Secretary, I'm not sure if you have it on your slide regarding your overpayment process and, you know, anything like that with respect to all the Q&A that's been asked. So can you please make sure that you provide that copy to the committee? I'm not sure whether it's on this. And then we'll get back to the questions on overpayment because something came to mind as we are all having that conversation regarding what Representative Tina was referring to with respect to a July 7 letter that you had responded to on the Open Government Act. Short recess, 5 minutes. Thank you. is the $14.9 million included in this number? It is?
Yes,
Okay, so that means the difference is that additional overpayment that have been identified by the CNMI Department of Labor?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, so 1868 overpayment cases within the CNMI. Can you break down the numbers per municipality? How many cases are from Saipan, Tinian, and Rhoda? Are you able to provide that data now, or you need to come back on it later?
I believe we need to come back to you, Madam Chair.
Okay, all right. That'll be great. Now, let's move along to some of the questions here. And then there's going to be more questions when we meet the following week, and I will do another announcement on that date. So the 20th would not be the comeback date after this today. It's going to be the following week, and we're going to look at our calendar to make sure that there's a chamber that's available for us to use. Okay, so let me get back to the data questions. And you, Madam Secretary, earlier you stated as of June 2020, correct? Can we take that slide down to that data information, please, on your slide? And then the reason for that is because this is very important with respect to trying to understand what is the true numbers in terms of unique claimants and how many claims pass through the CNMI Department of Labor for PUA, FBUC, and of course LWA falling within the same time period of the first PUA benefits, okay? And so as of June 20, I believe in one of your PowerPoint, if you could get yourself to that PowerPoint number on your data, if you could find it. And I'm going to read out one press release that was produced as under the request of Open Government Act. And it's dated December 27, 2020, which states 18,896 CNMI claims. Now the word claims, okay, was used on that particular press release for the period beginning June 17, 2020 to December 17, 2020. Now, these are the same time period that is within the LWA period, correct? Okay.
Yes.
Does this number match your PowerPoint presentation today? 18,896 CNMI claims. That is on your press release dated December 27, 2020.
Is it on the PowerPoint today? Sorry.
I believe so on the PowerPoint, or it was a statement that was made earlier indicating June 2020. So let me carry on as you're looking for that information. On this same Department of Labor press release date, December 27, 2020, it was stated that 13,801 were eligible claimants, while 5,095 claims were flagged. My question is, which is correct? Claims or claimants? Because on your same press release, you mentioned 18,896 CNMI claims. But then you went on to say that 13,801 were eligible claimants. Claimants is a person. Claims is a transaction per week. Which one is correct on your press release?
Okay, so I'm going to clarify. The 18,896 are claimants. The 13,861 eligible claimants were deemed able to receive pool benefits, and the 5,095 were number of claimants deemed ineligible and flagged.
So it's not claims.
Claimants.
It's claimants.
Yes, ma'am.
So who reviews your press release when this information goes out to the public? And the reason why I asked the question is because I'll give you an example. During my experience being the Secretary of Labor during the DUA program under Super Typhoon Sodalor. No press release goes out without the proper review by FEMA. Internally, maybe you have your own process, but this is very critical because when you are not mindful of the words you use, and when you go through an audit and inquiries and oversight, such as what's going on today, it makes a difference to understand the numbers, claimants versus claims, and all of the issues that we are trying to address with individuals that are waiting for their benefits. And that's something that I would like to, encourage today, that moving forward, the next press release, polish it up, read it, reread it, maybe 10 times to make sure that what you're trying to communicate is exactly correct and not misleading. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, again, the LWA falls within that period, and that is very important again to try to regurgitate those numbers because $2.2 million for LWA is a lot of money. Similarly, with what we're looking at, almost $500 million for PUA FPOC combined. That's almost like, 100% of the ARPA money, correct? And that's a lot of money that could circulate in our local economy. I understand about deobligation. I understand about not having a full expenditure ratio. But at the present time, as we speak, it's under 30% expenditure ratio. And the federal government does measure a state grantee on its expenditure ratio. So that's something to be mindful about. Now, I'm going to move on to my next question on LWA. Is that a taxable income? I asked that question during the oversight of the LWA program, but it was not responded to because labor had to, I guess, be sought, the guidance. So I'm going to repeat the same question that I asked under the LWA inquiry. If the LWA benefits are taxable income.
Madam Chair, can I verify that, please? Because I know that with PUA, it is the the claimant who decides whether taxes will be deducted at that time when they receive the benefits, or later on, they're going to pay it themselves. But I'm not quite sure about the LWA.
I'm glad you mentioned that the claimant must decide that, and which is very true.
With PUA.
Right, right. So I'm going to get to that question later on because on your allotment advices, it does not say so. On the fund status report, does not state that. I'll talk about that later. And I thank you for making that public statement on record. Very important. And yeah, find out on that because again, the 1099-Gs that went out to individuals that received the $900 for LWA, we wonder if the $900 is included on that. And we understand too that IRS gave a waiver of PUA benefits of about, I believe, $10,200. This is very critical because people are filing their taxes. And I think the tax filing period is over already. And if all of these numbers are incorrect or unanswered, people may be filing erroneous statements. And that could affect them on their next subsequent, period of either their tax refund or whatever it is. So this is a responsibility on the cognizant department at the state level to make sure that all of these questions, all of these processes are understood clearly so that applicants are not affected. Okay, so I'm going to move on to my next question. I do want to remind Madam Secretary that you are under oath to speak the truth and to be transparent also with the committee. So my question is, we do know, based on all public information articles, that there was a situation within the Guam Department of Labor where a government employee had been identified, um, creating or transacting fraudulent claims through the PUA program. And if I'm not mistaken, on those press releases that came out on the Guam journals, whether it's their local papers or some magazines, that that particular Guam Department of Labor employee has been prosecuted. I'm not sure whether the outcome is jail time or whatever it is. Where this matter is leading me to is I came across a social media posting a while back that states a CNMI Department of Labor employee had forced an employer to produce some kind of letter so that the CNMI Department of Labor employee's son can receive the PUA benefits to the amount of $18,000. I have reviewed your report on your ETA 227, report line 102, where it states 0 for case of agency employee benefit fraud. Is that something that relates to what I'm talking about? And has there been an incident within the CNMI Department of Labor of any employee that have committed such act? You may respond.
To the first question about your ETA 227 report, line 102 and 0 cases for agency fraud, that is correct.
Yes, it says line 102, there was I guess the data that was inputted on that is 0 for case of agency employee benefit fraud. So is that something that is right in line of the same incident as of the Guam Department of Labor incident? If not, I'm still framing the question whether has there been any employee or employees of the CNMI Department of Labor that have committed something of the same nature.
I can't speak to the Guam PUA program,
Understood.
but for the CNMI Department of Labor, we do not have any employees who have committed any type of fraudulent claims.
No employee within the CNMI Department of Labor committed any fraudulent
At this point in time.
activities
That's
regarding
right.
the program.
That's correct.
And nobody was ever terminated from the Department of Labor for whatever reason or in relation to the administration of the PUA and FUC program.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you for your response. Now, my next question comes into the same report, ETA 227, report section A, overpayments, established causes. It states 705 non-fraud cases for a total of $3.6 million. Can you tell us if these non-fraud cases are all CNMI cases and why this $3.6 million error?
Madam Chair, what report are you reading those figures from, please?
The report is ETA 227, section A, overpayments, established dash causes.
And what date?
I don't have the date here. It's one of those Open Government Act documentation that you have provided the office. So you may want to go back to that and take a look at that.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
You can get that responded on the next meeting that we have. And that leads me to the question of the weekly benefits calculation, even with respect to the overpayments. I do understand that some people apply electronically online. Some people also submit manual applications. Walk us briefly through the process when these weekly benefits are being calculated. Is a person sitting behind the monitor and entering the data on all the weekly information for each particular person? Or is the computer designed on the back end for each field on the database to be calculating out the benefits?
It is the portal who calculates the benefits based on the information provided by the claimant. Based on the documents that are provided by the claimant, the auditors or adjudicators review and make sure that they match earnings versus documents uploaded versus what the employer said the employee was earning or not earning. So a lot of investigation goes into adjudicating a claim. Many of our claimants do not have access to a laptop or internet, and so those paper applications are being inputted manually, but it is the portal that will calculate the correct benefits, hopefully the correct benefits for the PUA benefits. I mean, payments for the PUA benefits.
Okay,
The portal.
understood. So it is the system that is programmed on every field when the labor employee keys in the data, whatever that value is, and it calculates it out.
That is correct.
Now, on the same conversation, wouldn't it be the responsibility also of the employee to make sure that the calculations are correct?
The
And that-
DLL employee?
Uh-huh.
Yes, ma'am.
And if that particular error is discovered, I mean, mathematically speaking, right? I mean, I'm sure the person would look at the net result of what that payment would be, rather than just having full faith on the system that it'll be calculating correctly so that issues on overpayments will be avoided.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
So is there um, is that something of the number of work orders that was submitted, 250 work orders that was submitted to Geo Solutions to address? Because that's a substantial amount of money of overpayments that went out.
And we
It's
do try, yes, Madam Chair, excuse me, we do try to adjust any of the inaccurate calculations the portal or the claimant may have made. That's the job of the BPC unit. Each adjudicator also tries to make sure that the documents match earnings, check stubs, and what the claimant is claiming as far as his earnings or reduced hours.
So those checks at the end of the calculation, considering it's the system calculating that somebody within the Department of Labor, whoever's working that particular case, make sure that at the last balance of that account, that the calculations are done correctly by the system. And if it's not done correctly by the system, then you can go in there and overwrite the system, correct?
Adjustments are made, yes, we try to make that as accurate as possible based on all the documents and what the claimant is submitting as far as justification or verification of earnings. That is correct, Madam Chair.
Okay. Now, again, on the same subject matter with, it was earlier stated that there's effort being done to try and collect from individuals that have left the CNMI. My question is, I understand that CW1s were not qualified under the qualified alien status definition on the first period of the PUA FUC benefits. How much of the overpayments went out to CW1s? Do you have that data?
We
If you-
can get that data
Okay.
for you, Madam Chair.
Get us that data on the next meeting. Also, on the weekly benefits amount, how many denials were issued for PUA 1, currently now 2 and 3 respectively?
Can I get that
Sure.
data as well to you?
Thank you. On my next inquiry, it states on ETA 227, report section A, that 2,033 cases of fraud for a total amount of 11.9 for PUA. And on section B, under comments in small print, it states FPUC estimate $15.6 million. Is this report saying that $27.5 million of PUA and FPUC is a realized amount lost to fraud, and for which PUA benefit time period? 1, 2, or 3? Obviously, the bulk of it is 1. We're in PUA 2 right now.
Madam Chair, I've just been informed, ETA 227, that report is just for FPUC. And I need to see the document you're referring to so I can make sure. I
Sure,
give you the
just
right
go back
answer.
to the documents you had provided me.
Okay.
I'm taking it straight from the documents
Okay.
you had given my office. So
Okay.
understood, if it's just only for PUA, I guess that's why the footnote on FPUC is at the bottom, but regardless, it's important to know what's going on with that. And then I asked, on your weekly benefit amounts. How many denials were issued for PUA 1, 2, and 3? I know you're in 2 and 3 right now, so that data would hopefully come up on the following week. Okay, let's see. Now, I read some of the unemployment insurance program letters, and we understand that we do not have an unemployment insurance program here in the Commonwealth. And that we also understand that a lot of these are, desired to be distributed out on a weekly basis. I have seen the documentations, including those that are redacted. They have batch numbers. So internally, I'm asking the department, for example, for the month of June, an example, there's 4 weeks, right? And every week, there could be thousands of claims for that week, correct?
Correct.
How is that being dispersed out with respect to making sure that, let's say we're addressing this week's, calculations, that individuals hope, we're hoping that the system would disperse out the monies on the following week for this week's payments, correct?
Correct.
Why the lump sum payment of multiple weeks? And the reason why I asked that question is because a lot of people have bought cars with poor money, but then they also lost the cars. They got repossessed because they were thinking that I'm going to get more benefits on the next week and so forth. And that's what I'm trying to understand, because these individuals, these families have actually faced, either disconnection notices, repossession fees, tow truck fees to go grab their cars, additional financial burdens to families that are already suffering. And what is the department doing with respect to that additional financial suffering? I'm wondering whether has it ever, been brought up to the attention of the federal grantor, if there's something there within the program. Again, we talk about overpayment if it's not their fault, right? It's the same thing as it's not their fault that the benefits did not come out on time and that their car got repossessed because they file their benefits weekly on a timely basis, but it's not coming out on time. And they lost that vehicle. They lost the power. They lost the telephone. They lost everything. That's painful. That is very painful. How can we fix this problem? To not continue to inflict the wound on people that are already hurting. That hurts. And I ask you to fix it. Take it up to the grantor. If not, let this Sinamite government swallow the debt. That's the way I feel. No mother, no child, no family should be going through that pain when they already lost their jobs, depending on the system to pay them on a weekly basis. They filed on time. Why? Why? That's why I'm asking the whys. For the very people that calls me every day and everybody else in this room, even you. We can do this. Get those weekly benefits paid out. It was mentioned that finance payment of the cycle. Does finance have any connection to the system? Or do you guys print out a hard copy of your claims for every week? And do you walk it into finance to process it? Or does finance just push the button and print the checks?
We have 2 pool coordinators assigned to finance to specifically work on pool benefits. So it is electronically processed. No hard copies are processed between the 2
Okay.
departments.
So can we work on that? I hope and I pray moving forward from here and next week, following week that we meet, that even before September 4th, the closing of the programs, if no extension is granted, that people will start seeing on a weekly basis some sort of benefit getting into their bank account or some kind of check from PUA and FPUC in the mailbox. so that they can reclaim their assets that they had hoped to get for their families. The school is opening, and the kids are going to be walking to school because there's no car because it got repossessed. That is painful. From a short recess. We will move into the announcement section of the agenda. I will be issuing recognition Representative JP?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick clarification questions before we move to the next order of business. Madam Secretary, just so I get my notes correct. So you mentioned that end of September, the what you call that, the IT vendor that you guys have contracted will end on the end of September,
Chairman Sablan, it is sometime in September. That's correct.
sometime September. And then my question is, does that mean that the portal ends also when, or does it go all through October 4th so that those adjudicated cases pending are still can be follow up in the portal?
We have a contingency plan, yes, Mr. Chairman. We are going to adjudicate and process claims even after the portal vendor's contract expires
Okay.
with us. We have
So
a
clarified.
contingency
That's my
plan.
very simple clarification. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Recognize Representative Camacho.
Thank you, Chair. This will be my last question. So, Madam Secretary, I understand that you have relocated to one of the MH buildings over in Puerto Rico. Is that correct?
We have moved most of the pool of coordinators to the MH1 building in Puerto Rico, yes.
What prompted that move?
We wanted to process as many pool applications as quickly as possible, keeping in mind the COVID-19 health protocols. We just didn't have the space at the 7 buildings in Capitol Hill. We were housing people outside of the buildings. It still wasn't conducive to electrical equipment, laptops, and also for the paperwork that was coming in. We had to find an office space that suited our particular requirements for processing PUA benefits.
Okay, fair enough. Because there are still people out there working. I guess your staff, right?
Yes, sir.
So these are the people that actually communicate with the clients, and they send all the paperwork to the MH1 building. Is that what you're saying?
Up in Capitol Hill, we have what we call receivers, and they do receive intake documents, paper documents. They also receive inquiries, but also our telephone lines at the MH1 building are all on and open for all telephone inquiries.
What's the highest level of supervision do you have up here in the hill?
You mean, am I there?
No, supervision. At what level supervisor, manager, operator, director is up here?
For the PUA or for the
Up
Department
here,
of Labor?
up here at the old office.
We have directors, supervisors at both Capitol Hill and also at the MH1 building.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I yield.
Any further questions from the members? I want to thank you, Madam Secretary, for coming this afternoon with your team. We will adjourn this meeting today, and I will issue another notice to meet the following week. Between the week of August 23rd and August 27th, we will see the availability of the chambers. Hopefully, we get to see more positive news on the newspaper regarding more benefits are being paid out for people that are waiting so that we could get the families back on track. I thank you. You are excused, and short recess.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the body. Thank you.
take a look on your calendars. I will be calling for another oversight of PUA and FPUC program between the week of the days of August 23rd through the 27th. Um, May I hear a motion to adjourn this meeting for today? It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Nays? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.